Welcome, everybody, to the Seth Joyner Show. We are literally today 14 days, well, I should say 13 days away from the first regular season game. With great anticipation, we are, waiting to see how this season is going to play out. I'm personally of the opinion that we're going to have a full season and an exciting season, to say the least. Focusing in on our Philadelphia Eagles, everyone's excited, but everyone's concerned because it seems like this organization cannot rid itself of the injury bug. I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine, an alumnus that I'm a part of, the Philadelphia Eagle Alumni Association with him. Played under Coach Andy Reid, was a stellar stalwart. I'm still trying to figure out how and why this guy isn't in the Eagles Hall of Fame. Three-time Pro Bowler, played left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Tra Thomas. Trey, how you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm fantastic, my brother. Working on my golf handicap, so next time I see you.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I tell you what, man, I'm just, help me understand because, I don't know if you know the NFL doc, Dr. Chow. I think I'm going to have him on in a couple of weeks or so just to talk about the state of injuries in the NFL, and particularly with the Philadelphia Eagles. We lose. Well, first and foremost, let's deal with the most important guy. Carson Wentz is banged up again, okay? And I know that people are saying it's no big deal, so on and so forth. What worries me is a lower body injury again. And then I'm going to tell you specifically what it is. They pretty much just have him on the shelf right now, and they're saying, there's no worries, he'll be okay. But how does this guy? How does he shed this tag, if you will, that he's oft injured and he's unreliable?
Well, you look at it, he's been hit so many times. And then when you go into a practice and you hear that Andre Dillard got pushed back to the point where Carson Wentz got rolled up, that he rolled into Carson Wentz's knees, then, it can be a bit concerning when you hear stuff like that. When you go back and you just look at over the past couple years, even when he came back after the Super Bowl in 2018, his first 4 games, he was sacked 13 times, hit 33 times, 32 or 33 times, just in his first 4 games back. And then it just kept going to where he ended up having a broken back. So then now you fast forward to 2019, last year, it only took him 6 quarters until he was knocked out with a concussion. So, a lot of it, yeah, he's been getting beat up. But, of course, his offensive line has been failing him, to be honest with you. For him to continue to take on all the hits that he's been taking.
Well, I'll say this, and moving on to that offensive line, when he came back in 2018, I thought that Doug put the ball in his hands and required too much of him. I think in those first 2 games that he was back, I think he threw the ball almost 89 times in those 2 games alone. Now, why would you put a quarterback coming off of major ACL, MCL surgery and put him in a situation where you put him out there and he's thrown the ball that many times?
Okay, so you go back to that 2018 season. His first game back was the Colts. He was sacked 5 times, hit 8. Then he went to Tennessee, 4 sacks, 11 hits. Then Minnesota, 3 sacks, 8 hits. Then New York, 1 sack, 5 hits. In that first 4-game stretch, man, that's a lot of beating, especially when you go back and you look at someone like Drew Brees, who was only sacked maybe 12 times the entire season. He had already been sacked that much within his first 4 games back. So, they put the ball in his hands because, you want Carson to go out there and feel confident and play his game. But when the protection isn't there, that's a problem.
And if it's not when it's a problem, you must put your quarterback in a situation where you try to throw the ball by setting it up through the run. Now, we talked about, the offensive line, and it's been an issue ever since they won the Super Bowl. The year they won the Super Bowl, they was without Jason Peters. Then last year, they lose Brandon Brooks for a while. He comes back off of injury. Then they lose Lane Johnson for the year. You come into this year, they haven't even gotten to preseason, if you will. There's not going to be a preseason, but I'm talking about the preseason weeks. My goodness, they lose Brandon Brooks to an Achilles heel injury before camp even starts. Now they've lost Andre Dillard, who was supposed to be their starting left tackle. What in the world is going on that they're enduring so many injuries? And what is this offensive line going to look like when we'll get to Jason Peters in a minute, but because that's the hot topic when you're talking about the offensive line right now. But what in the world is this offensive line going to look like, and what kind of confidence is Carson Wentz going to have moving forward, knowing that the guys that he really counted on being there, that 2/5 of those guys aren't even going to be there for the rest of the year?
Yeah. I mean, you know what this offensive line is going to look like right now is what you saw in their last scrimmage in the stadium, where they say that Sweat came out there and they said that his jersey from that practice, his jersey should be hung in Canton, Ohio, because of the practice that he had against that offensive line. I think they said that they gave up 14 or 16 sacks just in that practice. And then the scrimmage that you had before that, they gave up another 14, 15 sacks. And now that's saying something, because you're out there with a secondary that's much improved, but they're not out there really challenging the receivers like that. They're going to let the receivers go ahead and do their thing. They're not out there trying to break up passes and cut them off routes and do all of that other stuff there. So, that means that the defensive line is just out there getting wins quick and getting to the quarterback where they have to blow the whistle and blow the play dead.
So what is this offensive line going to look like? Obviously, you've got Pryor slated to start at left tackle, Sayamalo at left guard, Kelsey Peters at right guard, and Lane Johnson, who is injured also, is not 100%. That's what they look like at the present moment. But you've got Mailata, Herbig, Driscoll, and Wanu. Now, and those are your backups.
Yeah.
I mean, when I hear those names, I'm not overly excited about the prospects of, if one of the starters go down, that one of those guys are going to have to step in.
Yeah, it is extremely concerning, especially when you go back and you look at what the depth is. You don't have anybody that can step in and that you feel comfortable and say, all right, hey, go ahead and take care of this because we have a man down. You have Jason Peters. This is his first time in 14 years that he's been in a right-handed stance trying to play a position that he's never played. And then you put in Matt Pryor, who is naturally better on the right side. I don't even understand why we even play in this game where you're trying to put Matt Pryor at left tackle. He clearly is better on the right side, but for whatever reason, they feel like, all right, you know what? We're just going to try it out and just put him over there and see how it plays out. And then Doug Peterson had his comment today was, hey, you know what? He'll settle in. He'll work it out. That's not what you want to hear being 2 weeks out of the season, man, with the season opener where you're like, you know what, he'll be all right. He'll settle down. It'll be okay. He'll work itself out. That's not what I want to hear, when you only have 12 more days getting ready for this game. And you're going up against a defense that now you think that, we just going up against the Washington team of, all right, okay. Now they had, 40-something sacks last year? This is a defensive front that's not going to be a joke. Their first 5 games, you're going up against top 4 of those teams are top 10 pass rushing teams when it comes to getting to the quarterback. The only team that you're not really worried about is the Cincinnati Bengals. Sorry about that. That's your only one that you're kind of like, all right, you know what? But everybody else, you got to come out there and go to work because you have Washington, then you have the Rams that's coming, and then now you have the 49ers, and then you finish that whole little trip up with the Steelers, who were number 1 at getting at the quarterback last year.
So let me ask you this. My contention has been ever since Doug Peterson has been the coach here, and he's done a great job. My contention has been is that when there have been issues in protection, and you've had a guy who's struggling, rather than going, um, rather than leaving a tight end in, so that you can adjust your protections to help the quarterback, or going to a run first offense that allows, you to set the run up, the pass up off a play action pass, that he has been staunchly resistant to that. And he's been a guy that's just, this is my game plan. This is the way I'm going to call the plays, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what my injury situation is, and no matter what my personnel situation is. If it's not working because the players aren't executing, rather than the fact that, we've got some problems and some issues, and I need to adjust the way. Will he could get to a point, in your opinion, where he will change his mentality, or is he just entrenched in his way of thinking and doing it the way that he wants to? Because listen, the one thing they cannot do is they cannot put themselves in a situation where they endanger the health of Carson Wentz, because if he gets hurt, the season's over.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are times when you go back and you watch some of these games and you see them slide the protection at times to protect the players on the line instead of trying to protect the quarterback. And then when you had Jordan Mailata, he came out and he said something there where they did an interview, and he was talking about how comfortable he is and how he's been getting a lot better and he's feeling more like a football player. And he said one thing that was extremely interesting to me, what he said is that, you know what, I'm getting better at looking out and reading coverages. What the hell are you doing reading coverages as an offensive tackle, dog? Like, what are you doing? That in the 12 years that I played in the NFL, I never looked at coverage. What the hell I'm looking at coverage for? I got the baddest mother out there as a pass rusher that I need to handle. All I need to do is hear the call, cadence, and let's go whoop some ass. I'm not sitting out there trying. What I need to be reading coverage for? Now, that's when you have guys out there trying to see too much. You need to be a little bit tunnel vision at times where you got to deal with the defensive end. What are you looking at coverages for? That's the center and quarterback job. What the tackles? You had a play against Dallas last year where they had a 3-man front where they had 4 linebackers in there, and they slid the line left. And a corner, it was a nickel corner, a nickel back came up to the right, and it was a sack. It was a slide protection to the right, but instead they slid left. What are you doing? All you have to do is declare the guys a down lineman, and then you make them a 4-man front, and then now it's a nickel front. It makes it easier. But I think sometimes they get a little too slick, and they try to be a little too cute, and then now you put your quarterback in danger because you're not obeying the rules of the protection.
Right. Well, and to your point, your protection should always be set up to protect your quarterback more so than, and I get it. You've had some anomalies. There's been some times where Big V didn't play up to his potential and you had to protect him. I get that. Okay. But in my opinion, you can do that with the back. You can do that with the tight end. And still protect in a way that protects the quarterback and gives him time to do. But Doug would rather get 5 guys out into the route rather than keep an extra guy in and protect. And that's been a problem for them lately. And I'm just wondering, can we get to a point where we can evolve the way that we think, or are we just going to keep trying to shove a square peg in a round hole?
I think that there have been times where Doug's like, all right, you know what? Because there was a time when they were like, hey, man, we need you to run the ball more, run the ball more, run the ball more. And then, he started running the ball and saying, hey, you know what? Look at it. It can actually work. I can run the ball on these guys. So you've seen that he's tried to make some adjustments from time to time. But right now, you're going to have to make some adjustments just with this group so that you can get out of these first 5 games, man. I mean, this is going to be no joke, man. These defensive, and you already know, when you don't have these preseason games, the defense clicks way. Y'all click way quicker than the offense does. You know what I'm saying? And I don't try to, belittle what defensive players do is see ball, get ball, but defense clicks a lot quicker than offense. And so, this is going to be a challenge these first couple games coming up.
Well, so let's address the 500-pound gorilla in the room. So this week there's a report, and you know what? Doug Peterson, I read an article today where Doug Peterson kind of refuted the whole thing. He said that, I don't know where you guys get your information from. I don't understand, where this is coming from. But it was reported after Andre Dillard went down that Jason Peters pretty much said, hey, if you want me to play tackle, you're going to have to give me a bump and pay. You brought me in to be a guard. Now, there's multiple layers to this thing. As a player in my day and in your day, it was always, you hold out till you get what you want or you get what you can live with. But once you sign that contract, you come in, you show up, and you play. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Okay, I realize we're in a different era of football right now where these players understand the power that they possess, and they are welding it and they're exercising it to the utmost. Okay. So Jason Peters said, I'm not playing left tackle unless you bump me up in pay. Okay. So first of all, I got to say, he had to know that this scenario in some way, that could be the scenario. So did he not account for that? Did he not negotiate that? Did he not think to himself and say, well, hey, if Andre Dillard falls flat on his face and then they decide to put me at left tackle, okay, let me negotiate it in my deal. And where's the foresight on the Eagles side as well? So this isn't an issue. So you say, okay, well, if we have to play you at tackle, okay, we'll silently bump your deal where it's not a public issue. But obviously they didn't talk about that, and he made it very public that he's not moving over there. Now, if they get into a crunch and they got to play him there, what's the end result here?
It's very interesting, man, to see. I'm with you on this. Where was the foresight in this to say, okay, at some point that maybe Dillard would go down and you would have to switch JP over there, or maybe he didn't really work out at right guard. The man has not been in a right-handed stance since his rookie year, which was 15 years ago? And he may have gone over every now and then to do some unbalance or whatever, but he hasn't been in a right-handed stance in 14, 15 years. And now you're going to say, all right, you know what? We want you to switch over to the other side and then play a position you've never played. I don't think people really understand the muscle memory that it takes to switch from side to side and to be effective. I mean, it's not about talent and about, the strength and athleticism. It's about muscle memory and being able to do it over and over. You're used to being in a left-handed stance. You're used to doing things a certain type of way. And then are you going to be challenged in practice enough? You don't have any preseason games to really go full tilt. The red jersey is still out there. So the defenders are going to pull up on you. You're not doing any one-on-ones. Lane Johnson hasn't practiced in 2 weeks. So the chemistry that's needed between a guard and tackle isn't there. So, what's going to happen with that? But, when you go back to the contract situation, I just feel like, what, if this is the report and if this is what JP is saying, he understands that, look, I got y'all, you're going to have to bump me up. And I get it. I absolutely get it because, hey, if it were the other way around, if JP were to get hurt or something happened, they cut him with no heart, without even thinking about it. You out of there. You just saw the situation where it was in Minnesota, where they told the man, look, man, either you go ahead and take this reconstruction of your contract, or we're going to release you. So, the team always has the upper hand. So now when the player has the upper hand and he says, now it's all a problem. Now everybody, oh my God, what happened to team first? Damn team first. When you talk about pay, you know what I'm saying? Because it ain't team first when it's the organization that has when they have the upper hand. And I get it. Everybody like, hey man, put everybody first. Oh, all right. Think that okay, this ain't a high school or college, and he has the upper hand, and so he's like, all right, hey, I need to get paid. If you want me to bump over to this position and play and be the starting left tackle, then I need to get a little bit of that starting money. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go out there and break the bank and give him 10, 12 million, but you do need to bump him up a little bit.
Well, I mean, listen, if he stays at the 3 million that he's at, according to reports, okay, and he moves a left tackle, he would be the 31st highest paid tackle in the NFL. Okay, so that would be unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Okay? But Trey, let's play devil's advocate. Okay, let's play devil's advocate. For the last 2 to 3 years, he's been making over $11 million a year. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, if he hadn't played on a consistent basis, I watched this guy last year go in and out of games at crucial periods of the game because he either looked tired or he had some kind of injury that was nagging him. Okay. So did the Eagles reserve the right at that point in time to go back to him and tell him, hey, you only giving us a half a game worth of work. Maybe we should only be paying you a half a game worth of salary. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. And listen, I'm always on the player side because I know the business of football, and I want these guys to get and make as much money as they can. Okay, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate because I see a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. Some guys on here. Let me see. Chael Scott. He said, "Man, this is insane. Give JP his money. He's a Hall of Famer. Don't nickel and dime a Hall of Famer. Well, he ain't a Hall of Famer until he get into the Hall of Fame. That's the first thing. Okay.
Yeah.
The second part is the precedent that you set for your team and your organization. Because if I'm a young guy in the middle of my career and I'm tearing it up and I'm outperforming my contract, okay, and you do this for Jason Peters and it becomes public knowledge, you think when the season is over and I got 2 more years on my deal that I'm not going to be knocking on Harry Roseman's door?
I think the precedent was set when Nick Foles missed his incentive by 4 plays, and they went head on and cut him a check for that incentive for whatever that extra $1 million was. That precedent had been set. Now, I don't know about you, but I know I've missed some of my bonuses by just a hair and was just SOL. You know what I'm saying? So the precedent has already been set when you did it for Nick Foles, but now when it's JP turn, like, hey man, hey, and now when he was sitting out some of those games, and I mean not sitting out, but got hurt or whatever the situation was, when he was making 11 mil, what you think you gonna get out of him when he only making 3, and he's playing on a different side and playing a different position? You think he gonna gut it out and go out there and play on half a leg or whatever it is when he only making 3? All right. You may as well go ahead and get Matt Pryor and some of those young cats ready now. Because if you're saying like, all right, we're not gonna bump you up in your pay, and we're gonna just make you only play at 3 mil, and we're gonna make you play a position that you never played before on a side that you never played at since your rookie year. Okay, all right. See how many games he missed this year.
Well, then my thing is, if you're gonna get a half-ass effort, and Stoutland and every other coach on this team, they know when JP's giving everything that he can give and when he's not. Is that cause for you to say to yourself, okay, if we ever got to get to a place where I got to take Matt Pryor and move him to right guard, and God forbid I got to take Jack Driscoll and play him at left tackle, I might as well cut Jason Peters then. If that's the situation, if I can't get him to do what's best for the football team because it comes down to a matter of dollars, then I'm gonna have to just fly. I'm gonna have to ride with these young guys, and now he becomes a cancer in my offensive line room instead of the great leader that he's been held up to be all of these years. And I got to have that guy out the building.
Yeah, and that's the situation where you're in. And I'm not saying that he's going to give a half-ass effort. I think that, I think JP is going to go out there and he's going to battle. But I think that because he's at a position that he's never played in and he's on a side that he's never been on, injury is going to happen. There's something that's going to happen. Either he's going to get banged up or another player is going to get banged up just because, you know, you're not used to being on that side and you haven't had any preseason games to really kind of gauge yourself or to see where you are. You're out there in practice where you have a red jersey behind you. Guys are going to pull up at some point. So now, you know, once that red jersey come out, they full tilt. There ain't none of that, you know, hey, we just going to tap him on his back and just keep running back. No, they're coming to take his head off. And like I said, it only took 2 games for them to for Carson to get knocked out against Atlanta when he got that concussion. And then he threw his first interception because of a blown. They didn't pick up the blitz because again, you slid the line to the left instead of sliding the line to a nickel back that was coming off the right side. And they ended up lighting him up, and he threw his first interception against Atlanta because of they didn't pick up the blitz and slid the wrong way and ignored the rules of the protection.
So let's talk about Doug Peterson. I continue to find I love to listen to Doug Peterson's quotes, his pressers, and all of those things because, in my opinion, there's a lot of things that when you're trained to like listen to it and pick it up, there's a lot of things that you can decipher from what he says that kind of goes over a lot of other people's heads. So I'm reading articles today, and you know, Peterson is talking about how great he's looked at right guard, that you know he's staying at right guard. This is after, you know, the report is out that he says that he's not playing left tackle unless they bump him in pay. Then Doug was pressed. What if you asked him to play left tackle? What would that look like? And Doug, there was a long pause, according to this report. And Doug said, well, that's a private matter. You know, that would just happen between Jason and myself, whether we ask him to move. And now we know good and darn well that Howie is the guy that's making all decisions as far as the money is concerned. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is it possible when you read between the lines of all of this stuff that Howie pretty much said, I ain't paying him another damn penny. Okay. Doug just kind of fell in line and said, hey, you know, he's just going to play right guard because he's having an outstanding deal there. So then when Doug gets pressed on it, he pretty much says, well, that's a private matter. Since when does it become a private matter? Listen, I had coaches come to me in the midst of a game. Hey, we need you to move from right linebacker to play over at left linebacker. Mm-hmm. When you talk to the coach about, hey, that's where the hell we needed him.
Mm-hmm.
So now Doug is doing his little soft shoe. So, I mean, how does that affect the situation? I mean, because to me, Jason's got some unprecedented power that I've never seen exercised over this organization. You know damn well if Joe Banner was the GM, he might be out the building by now.
Oh yeah. Oh, you say what? Oh, you gonna try to strong arm me? All right. Well, that right there is the door. You know what I'm saying? So this is something so different and so wild. But here's my thing. Last year when Lane went down and they were getting ready for the Rams after the Rams, JP was like, hey, man, I'll move over and play right tackle if needed. Where's that same guy? You know, you just had your starting left tackle go down. Why not? Hey, oh, y'all need me to play left tackle? I'll go in over there. But it's because of that money. You know, you're like, oh, I'm not playing left tackle unless you're going to pay starting left tackle money. And to be the 31st, at the 31st, now that ain't going to cut it, especially for a Hall of Fame. He needs to bump up the pay. But now when you say, Doug, like, hey, man, I go talk to him and we're going to, it'll be between us. He probably had that conversation. It didn't go the way he wanted it.
Well, I mean, it's always interesting for me to, listen to the things that comes out of, Doug's mouth because, and listen, I love the guy. I think that, deep down inside, not only is he a great football coach, but I think, the players actually love him. But I hate to see him thrust in these positions of having to explain things sometimes that's outside of his control. Because when you talk about, the inner workings and, decisions that are made as far as money is concerned, I don't think that Doug really makes those decisions. I believe that there's some collaborative things, but I think that there's some things that are already, the decisions are already made before they get to Doug's level. Money things, that's Howie. I even think, on the defensive side of the ball, I think that Jim Schwartz called the shots over there. I don't think Doug really has any kind of say what goes on the defensive side of the ball.
I think that's something that's been reported too, where they say like, on that side of the ball, it's like you have two head coaches. Where you have Doug, he's over the team and over the offense, but then Schwartz runs that defense. That's all him.
I just hate Trey to see him put in these situations because you can see the uncomfortability, and I think he's learning how to prepare himself ahead of time, for those questions, because I think you have to. If you're put in this situation, you don't want to get caught out there where, you're saying the wrong thing that you got to come back and you got to eat later on.
Yeah.
And he's been put in that situation a couple of times. There's been things that Jim Schwartz has said that kind of made me scratch my head. I'm like, well, you the defensive coordinator. You ain't the head coach. I can't believe you just said that. And Doug never addresses it. He never makes a big deal about it. He just goes along. But there's been time and time again where he's been put in these uncomfortable positions. And when you look at those quotes, to me, that sounds like uncomfortability, man.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out.
It is. So let's look at the defensive side of the ball, because as we made some off-season moves, that improved the defensive side of the football. But at the other end of the spectrum, that injury bug is still, got its teeth in our defensive line as well. Right now, you got Hargrove, you got Barnett, you got Curry, who just signed a week and a half ago. And now Avery, all four of them hurt. Hargrave with a pec injury. They said that could be long-term. I mean, you got to really be careful with that, because if he tears the pec, it's a wrap. The season is done. Then you got Barnett with ankle issues again. And they're both, Curry and Avery are both, on the shelf with lower body injuries. I wish they tell us what the heck is what a lower body injury is, man. It's unbelievable. So that leaves you with Graham as a starter, Cox as a starter, Jackson, who I hear is having a phenomenal camp, and Josh Sweat. And it's one thing to beat up on Matt Pryor, Josh Sweat. It's one thing to beat up on, these young guys. It's a whole nother ball of wax lining up against each team's best offensive lineman, presumably. That's at left tackle. And then when you look at the depth, there's just no depth there. You got Rush and Ridgeway as backups at defensive tackle, and you got Miller and Tuhill, who I've heard, they love their athleticism, but I haven't heard anything great going on out of him as a pass rusher. Your thought?
Yeah, it's interesting because, and this is what's so different about not having all these preseason, without having any preseason games. No one knows what we're going to get out there. You know what you're going to get out of Fletcher Cox when he wants to come out there and play. I think that, Josh Sweat, it has to start somewhere. I think that you started seeing him doing some stuff, because of his height and length. He started working that one-arm bull rush, working the stab, really working some leverage. So I saw some pretty decent rushes out of him throughout the season. He only finished, I think he had 4 sacks in the season. But, he started coming along. Brandon Graham, he's going to be whatever he is. I definitely want to see Barnett really have to, start turning it on a little bit. I like, his aggressiveness at times. It does get him in trouble with the extra penalties and all of that. But I would like to see him add a little bit more mixture into his rush. I think that at times you would see him as a young rusher just always trying to run around the offensive lineman. But you saw him last year starting to set up his moves a little bit better. I think he needs to kind of implement a spin move from time to time. I also think our defensive ends, they need to work on layering their rushes. There are too many times where I see both of our DNs pretty much running into each other behind the quarterback. And when I say layering, where you have one that's going to run high, and then you have another one that's not as shallow. So they're not running into each other behind the quarterback. They're kind of overlapping each other where, you kind of use one to flush the quarterback out, and then you have the other one that's going to chase him from behind. So I think they need to kind of start layering their rushes a little bit, especially against extremely athletic quarterbacks. But, it's going to be interesting because, again, you have the injuries coming down. Avery is going down with, they thought it was a torn knee, but it ended up being a bone bruise. And just seeing how everybody is going to, come to play, because it's one thing, like you said, to go out there and beat up on this offensive line and get 14 sacks in a practice, but how's it going to work when you get out there against some of the better offensive lines in the game? Now, one thing that's going to be going for them is naturally defense always clicks a lot quicker than the offense, so they'll have that going for them. But we'll see how this all plays out, and I think that the addition to this secondary is really going to help this defensive front, because to me, I think coverage dictates a sack. That's going to help you get the sacks. If you can get that quarterback to hold the ball just a tick longer, if you have a good rusher that can get out there and get after it, I think with the secondary the way we have them right now, if we can get that quarterback to hold the ball, they should get home.
So now they've got a new D-line coach. So talk to me about what you see, because some of the same issues that you just talked about are some of the same issues that I've had with the defensive ends for years. They're not prototypical defensive ends size-wise, height-wise, weight-wise. So conversely, when you've got defensive ends that are 6'3", 6'4" at the top end, and they only weigh about 265 pounds, they're at a market disadvantage, especially that right defensive end, because he's playing against that left tackle on the offensive side of the ball. That guy is normally 320 to 330 with great feet.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's like a grown man playing against a child.
Yeah.
So from a pass rush perspective, they know that they can't win the physical battle. So I think you've seen Derek Barnett try to win with speed more time than not. Now, every once in a while, he'll catch a guy off balance, and he'll run by him. And every once in a while, he'll convert his speed to power rush, catch a guy on his heels and bull rush him. But my biggest problem has been not only with him, but with Brandon Graham too. They really don't. They got one or two pass rush moves, and that's it. Oh, and how much easier for you as a tackle as you prepare for a guy, you're watching him and that he only got two moves. They don't have a multitude of moves, and the most troubling part is they don't have a counter move off of every single rush move that they have. Now, I'm the type of guy, I grew up in the 4-3 system. I grew up with guys like, a Reggie White and a Clyde Simmons. Long guy, 6'5" plus, 280 pounds plus, with long arms, with multiple moves that can translate those moves to a counter move at a drop of a hat. I was really disappointed. Now I love Vinny Curry, but I was disappointed to see them sign him back. The guy I really wanted them to go get was Everson Griffin. He turns around and goes signs with the Dallas Cowboys because he's more of a prototypical style defensive end, and he can play the run. But they made a decision to bring back a guy that they were familiar with, a guy that gives them more of what they have instead of a change up, to something that they don't have. And the defensive end position, quite frankly, man, it worries me to death, man. It worries me because, those guys are supposed to be the guys that really create the pressure.
Yeah, and what I see out of them is they don't change their stance enough for me. They're always, when you go out there, and I've been watching our defensive rush, and they don't change their. You look at BG, he always lines up with his inside foot back, and what that's saying that I know that as an offensive tackle, because I count steps, I know that with his inside foot back. Let's see, let me get right here. So if my right hand is going to be up, my left foot hand is back. He's going to go 1, 2, and then his third step is what's coming at me, all right? So I know that we're going to make contact on 3. If not, it's going to be 5. You know what I'm saying? So I know in my head he's going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going to be either a bull rush on 3 or it's going to be 5. He's going to be brushing upfield. So I don't see them changing up their stance enough for me because they always have the same stance. And if you always have the same stance, you're always going to make contact at the same point. And it makes it a lot easier for offensive tackles to jump you. If you always line up with your inside foot back, you have to take 2 steps before you can attack. You see what I'm saying? Now, if your outside foot is back, you can take 1 step and then come in on 2. But if your inside foot is back, you got to go 1, 2, and then the 3rd step. So if an inside foot is back, a lot of times offensive tackles will just jump them. Because why? You have to take 2 steps. And then I think a lot of times when you look at our games, their stances don't – sometimes they call games just to call a game. Why run a TE where it's a tackle looping out and the end coming across against a vertical setting tackle? It's so easy for him to pick it up. If the vertical setting, the tackle is going to set straight back. So when that tackle comes out to work over the offensive tackle, all he does is slide back in there, and then he bunches the guard back out to take on the defensive end that's looping around. So I think at times their games don't match what the offensive line is presenting as far as the way they set. So, I think they need to game plan how they're going to run their stunts based off of how that offensive line sets. And then you need to change up your stance to match up what you want it to be. Because you see too many times where they want to run a quick TE, but then he has a stutter step because he doesn't have his feet together because he lined up a certain type of way and he has to take those extra steps to get his foot down to come back around. So to me, it just seems like you should change your stance based off what kind of rush you want to give. Then you have to look at, all right, what kind of games you want to run based off of how the offensive line sets. And that's just, the way I look at it when I look at our defensive front and when I'm studying their rushes.
You guys are watching the Seth Joyner Show with my guest today, Tra Thomas. Tra, you know what? We think along the same way. We speak the same language. My issue has always been, I always say this. When you watch something on the field and it's flawed, it's either being coached or it's being allowed. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I watch our defensive ends line up, okay, and BG is lined up on the left side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So his inside foot should be up because he's really supposed to be a contained player. So the only way that I can keep my outside arm, my outside foot free is to be lined up the proper way. But what he does is he switches his feet because when his outside foot is up and his inside foot is back, that presents him an opportunity to be in a sprinter stance. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get a good start, but he's employing a right defensive end stance over on the left side. Okay, and it puts him at a defect and at a default. Now, when you're playing against a technician like what you're talking about, and what people don't realize is not only were you a great offensive tackle, and you looked at these little minute things that help you become really, really good at what you do, but they don't realize that you also coached on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line as well. Okay? So when you're doing that, now you look at things from a different perspective. When I was playing outside linebacker on the left side, hell yeah, I wanted to line up in a right-handed stance to be in a sprinter stance in blitz situations. But my coaches would look at me and be like, "You're giving it away. You're giving it away for one, and secondly, if they motion the Z down or they motion the U across and return him, they can crack toss you all day long. You got to be in a position. You got to be in a position where you can see it. Okay. So now, why are they allowing BG to do that? Why are they allowing the defensive ends on the other side to do that? One of the reasons why we lose contain so much, and I think it's one of the things that they talk about. They talk about Jim Schwartz has this system of belief where he believes that he doesn't really believe in contain on the side where a quarterback wouldn't naturally scramble to. So that's why you see BG sometimes making so many plays down the line where he crashes. But when they run bootleg back out at him, he loses contain a lot. And they don't really care about it. And my thing is when you play against really good quarterbacks that are a double threat, that can throw the ball on the run or get outside the pocket like a Russell Wilson, like a Lamar Jackson, you asking for trouble because they don't game plan that, you know? So why aren't you coaching these guys to be technically and fundamentally sound so that they can cover everything, you know, everything that an offense can throw at them, and make an offensive coordinator scrub some things from his game plan based upon you being technically sound in everything that you do.
Yeah, to me, that's the best way to attack on the defense. You know, to be able to not have a style. You should be technically sound, but be able to mix whatever you want to mix based off of what that offense. What you're doing is your defense is going to be based off of whatever the offense. You know what I'm saying? To me, I don't want to have a style. You know, I don't want to necessarily have a style. I want to be able to give you whatever. My counteraction is going to be whatever you do. My point is, when it comes to pass rush and getting after the quarterback, I want to be able to force a reaction for that offensive lineman and have a plan for it. So I know that if you're a puncher, all right, I'm going to go with my outside foot back. I'm going to come in, stab in, force you to punch, then I'm going to double hand swipe and then go. You know what I'm saying? If I know you're going to be one of those guys that's going to catch and you're going to go low to high with that in, all right, then I'm going to go still outside foot back, boom, boom, one hand stab. I'm going to give you that one hand stab, and then from the one hand stab, I can one hand stab, let it die and bend the corner. I can one hand stab or spin, whichever one is going to be there. So I think that you have to be able to have no style, but be able to say, you know what, I have a game plan for whatever this guy is going to present. Because you can't always give the same rush to everybody.
Well, you can't give the same rush all the time. And if you only have two, how many times are you really going to win with that? You know? I mean, and you can win. You're going to win with a speed rush every once in a while, okay? Just because, you know, you run an ET game, meaning you cross that tackle's face right now. So now, you know, you put him in a situation where he's got to be aware of that. So any kind of step inside is going to make that tackle pause in his kick, okay? So now that you created that, you can get the corner on him, okay? Now you changed his vision, you changed the way he's looking, you changed the way he's thinking. So now, what other moves do you have off of that? You know, if I get the guy leaning because he's afraid I'm gonna get the corner on him, all I got to do is get his shoulders and his hip turn. Once he starts running, that little wham thing that Reggie used to do all the time, people used to always think that, you know, oh man, he is so strong that he can hit a 300-pound offensive lineman and send him like that. But what people don't realize, that's a momentum deal. Reggie's he's gonna speed rush you, and the minute he sees you turn your shoulder, he knows that your momentum is carrying you upfield. All he could just touch you with a pinky and make you go running out the frame.
Absolutely.
You know, but that was part of the entire his repertoire of understanding. Okay, if I can affect a guy, if I can make a guy move one way or the other, okay, now I got a counter move. Okay, but if you don't work on those moves and counter moves, how are you supposed to have them in the game? When I look at our defensive end, they got one move. Okay, and you talk about different levels. My thing is, when you're playing against a guy like Russell Wilson, you got to get 2 yards ahead of him, and you can't go any further. Okay, because realize that if you're not getting a great push with your defensive tackles, he's going to step through that end in that tackle gap. Okay, and if you just get the 2 yards and wait right there, he's going to run right to you. But I watch teams all the time. Those defensive ends, they run around, and like you said, they almost run into each other. And what they don't realize they're doing, they're creating a big gap. Whichever side he wants to escape to, he's going to be able to get out to that side every single time. And you see it time and time again and again. Okay, as a defensive coach, as a position coach, aren't I supposed to be teaching my guys, you know, to make the adjustment? You know, especially like I said before, especially in this instance, where you see the same mistake being made again and again and again, it's either being coached or it's being tolerated.
Exactly. And you got Baltimore this year, too. You're going to get Lamar Jackson.
You know, they're going to Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Listen, the first thing in my opinion that needs to happen, they got to get healthy, man. They got to get healthy. I think if they can get Hargrave back, and I think, there's what I wanted was for them to be able to bring in a guy like Griffin to create the pressure and create some competition over on that side for Barnett. It's not that I don't think that he can get it done, but sometimes, when you draft a guy first in the first round, you give him a job, he starts to get comfortable, because he knows he's a first round pick. He knows he's going to be there. Sometimes you need to create pressure. You need to create competition for a guy to let him know that just because you were drafted in the first round doesn't mean that you got everything locked up. If this guy outplays you, then he deserves to play. Now they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on him. That's telling,
Yeah.
So to me, this is kind of a make or break year. And then if he doesn't make, we right back in the draft next year for a defensive end, maybe 2.
Yeah.
If PG being 31 years old.
Yeah. You're gonna have to do something, and because you really don't have like you said, everybody is the same. You don't have a change of pace guy. You don't have anyone that's going to give you anything different. I think Sweat kind of gives you a little something different because he uses his length, uses his arms. He's going to long arm you and give you some of that. But you don't have anybody that's going to be and I don't know. And the thing is, I haven't been out there to the practice I've seen. I've heard about Osman. I believe, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but I know that he's been giving you some work, so it's going to be interesting. This first game is going to show us a lot because this going without any preseason games, and then they don't really show any of the one-on-ones. Like they'll show you the one-on-ones where a receiver, Deshaun Jackson, catch a big play or whatever, but you ain't showing me no pass rush, and that's what I want to see.
Well, the thing about not having the preseason that pains me the most is, for these young guys. Because, at the end of the day, how do you show these teams what you can do if it's not in a game-type situation? Practice is one thing, and you can never simulate or recreate game-time speed, in practice. Even, they had a scrimmage this past weekend. How do you create the environment of a real-time game so you can naturally assess these young guys and figure out, who is wonder right and who deserves, an opportunity to either be on this roster or be on your practice squad. Now, quite frankly, the practice squad is expanding to 16 players, so there's going to be some extra guys that you're able to keep on. But, we had this issue last year, Trey. We had wide receivers languishing on the practice squad last year that could have helped us early in the year that didn't get a chance to get off the practice squad until late in the year. And for what? It helped get us into the playoffs, but those changes could have and should have been made a long time ago. When you got JJ, who wasn't catching the ball, and you had a guy like Ward languishing on the practice squad. He doesn't come off the practice squad till late in the year because you waiting for JJ for the light to come on. Then it never came on.
Yeah, you giving Mac Hollins a chance. It was just it was crazy. You definitely needed these guys to come out there and play. And I think that hopefully they learn from their mistakes from last year. And you're seeing a lot of these young guys that's been working with Carson. That's one of the things that a lot of people have been really excited about here, about just how these young guys have been coming out and performing. Even JJ being able to, he's been showing out a little bit, playing with a little bit more confidence. So, hopefully that these guys, they learn from last year when you say, okay, you know what, we need to give a good look at everybody on this team and just put the best receiving core out there because, you're going to need these guys to win and win quick. So, because especially if you have an offensive line that's struggling, you're going to need these receivers to get out there and get it done quickly.
Speaking of the wide receivers, I was reading a study today where new wide receiver coach Aaron Moorhead said, that his wide receivers are underrated. His wide receiver core is underrated. Okay. Now, as a position coach, I get the mental game that you're playing, the mental message that you're trying to send to your players. because part of your job is to incite in them this level of confidence, this level of belief. So when they step on the field, they can take it to another level. But let's keep it real, Trey. Okay. The last 3 years, they've proven that they've underachieved. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can't say they're underrated until they get on the field and prove that they're underrated. Your thoughts as far as that's concerned, and listen, the improvements that they made, I expect for them to be light years better than what they were last year. Okay,
Yeah.
you can tell if I'm a coach, if I'm a wide receiver coach, I can go and tell my players, hey, they hating on you. They saying that you this, but you can't go on the media and say that my guys are underrated, and they haven't proven the damn thing yet.
I know that. Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from there. Why even put that pressure on them like that, especially when they haven't proven themselves? You're coming off a situation where they led the league in drops at one point last year. I mean, you need to let these guys go out there and perform. Let their performance speak for them. I mean, JJ is just starting to come with a little confidence. And one of the things that he did, where he did a report, and he was talking about one of the things he did was just stepped away from the game and didn't let everybody know what was going on. He just kind of just took it upon himself to go and put in the work, then broadcast it all over Instagram, because that's pretty hard now in this era now. I mean, everybody posts anytime they tie up their shoes. You know what I'm saying? So now he goes out there and he says, look, I'm going to go in there and put the work in. I'm just going to keep it to myself. So I think that really helped him with his confidence coming in this year. So now you're going to put all this unnecessary pressure on these guys when you go out there and you say something like that, because best believe the Washington team is going to be able to say, all right, you know what? Hey, man, that secondary, hey, this team feel like they're underrated. All right, we're going to go out there and show them. And I get it. Sometimes you want to build that confidence, but let that confidence be built in-house instead of putting it out there and creating the unnecessary pressure.
Well, I mean that's the point I was getting at the entire time. When I look at the rest of the wide receiving core, there's got to be some concern with Jalen Reagor right now. They're saying 4 weeks. How do they pick up the pieces for a guy that was so counted on to step in and be a major part of this offense? If you can keep D-Jax, 100%, and he doesn't say too much, to put his foot in his mouth anymore. And then you can get a guy like Jalen Reagor staying 100%. You got Ward in the slot, and you got these other young guys, surround him. I hear that Hightower's been having a great camp. If you have all of these pieces, at your disposal, then there's a lot that you can do. But when you have a guy, that you draft 21st overall, and he's having a heck of a camp, and all of a sudden he gets hurt. I mean, how does that shift what the coaches are doing? Because it's easy enough to say next man up. It's hard to do, when you're talking about taking another guy and plugging him in somewhere where somebody else has been running most of camp and getting a lot of the run.
Yeah, I know that had to take some wind out of their sails, to see him go down like that, and especially this close to the season. I mean, at least you have a couple weeks to kind of figure out what you can do, who you can plug in there. I think that Reagor was going to come in and contribute, but I didn't expect for him to really, just take over the game. I think that they were going to really lean on Deshaun Jackson a lot, and then you just take it from there. But it's going to be interesting to see how at least you have a couple weeks to kind of get everything going, but then you don't even have Carson practicing right now. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen right now?
Well, I feel the same way, because as challenging as this year is going to be, given the COVID, given, no OTAs, given, no preseason games, I think this year more than any other year, and I like, your input on this, I feel like we're about to find out who the really great and elite coaches are in the NFL, okay? Because not only are you going to have to communicate what it is that you want to have done, you're going to have to coach it. And, you're going to have to make adjustments. The NFL is really all about adjustments. The team, in my opinion, who can make the adjustments on the fly the best, is the team that's going to win, because you only get one halftime to go in and eat some lunches and eat some oranges rather and drink some Gatorade, and the coach can get on the board and make adjustments, at halftime. When you come out in the second half, the team who can like pull that whiteboard up or whatever they're using today and draw up that adjustment, and the teams that can implement it in the second half of the game is normally the team that's going to win. You got some coaches who maybe have been bailed out in the past with great players making great plays, or lackluster offenses making mistakes, But I think the veil is going to be pulled back, and we're really going to have an opportunity to look in and see who the great minds are, who the great coaches are, who the great coaches are making adjustments, who the great coaches are that can get their guys to make adjustments by.
Yeah, because that's what you're gonna have to see. I mean, especially and how you're gonna make adjustments and deal with players going down left and right. Because I mean, we're just getting the tip of the iceberg with these injuries now. Once you get the live contact, there's no telling what's gonna happen then.
Well, listen. I agree 100%. The live contact piece. I mean, they've had these limited. What was it? Four live contact days that they were allowed to have. I'm just not so sure how it is that you can get acclimated for the game, because once adrenaline gets to pumping and you're in the midst of a game, it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different ball of wax. So how are you going to get yourself prepared for that? The little nicks that you normally get in training camp are the ones that you endure during training camp that get you through the rest of the season. But all of a sudden now you don't even have that. And they try to protect the players last year as far as, especially the offense is concerned. This guy's not playing, and Carson ain't playing, and that guy's not playing. And, the first 4 games of the season last year, they looked like crap. They had no continuity. Guys were getting hurt and whatnot. What is this year going to look like? And I'm not just talking about just for the Eagles. That's going to be an issue for everybody across the board.
Yeah.
You had Joe Judge up in New York talking about, well, we may pull the jersey off of Daniel Jones, and have him. I'm like, dude, trying to get fired before he can even head coach a professional game. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah. Everybody's trying to find a different way to get everybody fired up. I think what you're going to see, like you said, the better coaches that can make adjustments, and then the teams that have more veterans on them. Guys that can pull, you can rally the troops and when you have true leaders on the team. I think when you find teams that have true leaders, those are the teams that are going to be a little bit more successful.
How do you think that, before we wrap up, how do you think coaching staff continuity plays into all of this? I mean, when you look at the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles are the only team with a staff in place. Now, there've been some turnover positionally, but when you're talking about, everybody knows that Doug is the offensive coordinator. He's a head coach / offensive coordinator, and then Jim Schwartz has been in place. But when you look at Dallas, when you look at Washington, when you look at New York, all 3 of those teams have new head coaches. How much does that play, not only in the East, but across the board? How does that play into, how well teams are going to fare this year?
I think that's going to be a big thing, just because you only had a month or so to kind of get the terminology and the way they want things called, the way they want you to communicate as far as the players and the coaches with the plays and all of that. So I think all of that is going to have a lot to do with it, and I think that's where we're at an advantage, because I mean, everybody is coming in speaking the same language except for the young guys that are coming in. They would have to learn anyway. So at least now you already have everything in place with our team, with the way they communicate, the way they expect things to be done, and they're not learning on the fly. So I think that's where that's a big advantage for us. And now it's just, let's see what's going to happen, man, in a couple weeks. I mean, hopefully, when you're saying, okay, we've had to do all of these virtual meetings throughout the off season and all of that. All right, now the rubber's going to have to meet the road.
Well, my friend, listen, I appreciate you joining me virtually today. You know, I tell my guests every single week that, you know, our most valuable possession is our time. And I appreciate you giving me, you know, an hour of your time today to talk Eagles. I hope, you know, our viewership, well, I know they enjoyed it, man, because you just straight fire the way you break it down. And you explain the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. Hopefully I got you on speed dial, so maybe I can have you on during the season as
Anytime.
things kind of progress. I'm gonna need your input as far as this offensive line is concerned. But thank you, man, for your time. I appreciate it. Once again, I know my viewers appreciate it, and I appreciate you, man. Thanks.
Already anytime, man. I'm working on my golf game, man. I'm getting ready for you.
Hey, listen, the weather's still good, man. So, you know, next time I'll be headed to Philly this weekend, man. So I'll try to catch up with you next week. Let's get out, you know, and chase it a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. All good,
brother,
man. For my producer, Derek Stevens, thank you as usual. We'll be right back here next week with another great show for you leading up, you know, to the first week of the season. Hey, man, in this crazy world, during this crazy time, I forgot my other producer, Tom Schrader. I got to give him a shout out as well. In this crazy world, in this crazy time, hey, listen, man, you guys be good to each other, take care of each other, and love each other. I will see you guys next week. Peace.